This year, the iconic Mississippi River is facing serious industrial impacts. An energy company plans to drill under this essential artery of the North American landscape. They are building a new tar sands pipeline, called Line 3, across Anishinaabe Treaty Territory in the state of Minnesota. In the coming months, Canadian company Enbridge Energy plans to drill and trench water crossings under and through pristine lakes, streams, and wetlands in the upper Mississippi River watershed. They will bore directly under the Mississippi itself in 2 separate locations. Indigenous communities have been leading environmentalists and activists in resisting Line 3 for years. Independent scientists who have been studying and monitoring the project are saying it's past time to listen.
I've been working on Minnesota streams and rivers for over 20 years now. As I began to learn more about this project and realized how many wetlands they were trenching through to install pipeline and how many streams were going to be crossed with pipeline, I became really concerned that both Enbridge and the state have drastically underestimated the acreage of wetland that's going to be permanently impacted. And the construction activity itself, I think, is more damaging than anyone is acknowledging. If you trench through a wetland, many, many times it's going to impact the whole wetland. No cumulative assessment was done by the state or Enbridge to say how close are we to a threshold where we're going to see problems with the Mississippi. Over here, it says entering wetland. So it's a classic of this is all wetland here. They installed the pipe, but they just allowed Enbridge to say the only permanent damage to this wetland is right where the pipe's gonna be for eternity. And that whole wetland's gonna be, wetland's gonna be changed. Right. So this is a approved dewatering site where basically they drained the wetland while they were digging the trench, because you can't lay a pipe in a pool of water.
You know, this is an area of the state where we have intact freshwater resources. That's not true of the state as a whole. That's not true of the region as a whole. I study stream and river ecology. In large parts of Minnesota, we've got water that does not meet the standards of the Clean Water Act. People like me, their whole career is like, how can we reverse this water quality degradation? But the scientific literature is pretty clear that once damage is done, it's nearly impossible to reverse. And so here we've got water systems that are healthy, that are intact, and we're degrading them for a completely unnecessary project.
They're clearing trees all the way along this corridor, all the way down to the river. It changes the functionality of that system for good, for the life of the pipeline. In our testimony, we called it death by 1,000 cuts. You can degrade one wetland here, degrade another wetland over there, and within each wetland you might feel like, oh, we only changed it a little bit. But you take that cumulatively, there's still a threshold at which you've done too much and things change. Wetlands are going to be even more important with a warming climate, changing climate, because again, they store water. They release water through a drought type period. We're gonna need that really badly.
We do not permit this. We prohibit this from going through our 1855 treaty area. We prohibit this. Fight for our rights! For our sons and daughters! For the air we breathe! For the water we drink! Because the whole damn planet is on the planet!
This river is a huge part of why I was up there. I really, really care about this river. I've spent a lot of time in, on, and around the Mississippi throughout my life.
I think there's this kind of misunderstanding about like, we're just going out there to get arrested, right? And it's just about getting arrested. That's not really what this is about, right? We're putting our bodies and our freedom on the line for a reason, to show that we care about our mother.
As a scientist, I was never trained to consult with Indigenous leaders or Indigenous ways of knowing, and it's a huge loss. Nature is old. As a geologist, I'm always thinking of the longer term. Our monitoring only goes back a few decades. Whereas there are some people who have been here, living here for a long time, who have been paying attention. I would very much like to see those bodies of knowledge incorporated, integrated, held up.
It's really clear that Indigenous people, communities have been raising concerns about this project since it was ever suggested. All of our scientific expertise, what we know about water quality impacts, climate impacts, I mean, it affirms what Indigenous people have been saying, is gonna happen to the land and to the water.
Bujun and Indue Maganidug. I am Ojibwe. Our people came here about 500 years ago. The resurgence in our culture is not just about learning the language, practicing our spiritual ways, but it's also about reconnecting with the land. What does sovereignty mean? To me, it means that I have the agency to create honorable, respectful, reciprocal relationships with the water, the rivers, the arteries, the trees on Turtle Island. It all starts here, in Minnesota, what heads down the Mississippi. This is the last pristine water we have in the state of Minnesota, and we need to save it.